I'm the founder and CEO of a $90 million a year e-commerce brand, currently in its 5th year of full operation. I'm also the founder of Ecomm Architects, where we have coached and helped over 100 Ecom brands scale in the last 6 months. And what I've actually learned through my own experience and coaching the others in the last 18 years is that the fastest way to scale any e-commerce brand is to identify the single constraint and then pour all your resources into actually solving it. Now, I think most founders are just guessing on what to do next. They don't have this systematic approach on how to scale the e-commerce brand, which then results in money and time lost. And what I'm going to teach you guys today is a framework that I use to help me pull the right levers at the right time so I can scale my brand as quick as I did. So you're not wasting time, putting your time, energy, and resources into things that aren't giving you the most leverage. So we want to think of this through 5 different steps or 5 different buckets. The first one is you want to just do more. This is the biggest mistake that I made. I see a lot of other ecom founders actually make. They just don't do more of what's actually working, right? And doing more of what is working is the most highly risk-adjusted move you can make. Just think about it. How many things did you have to try to get the thing that is working actually working now? And what's the likelihood of it continuing to work if you do more of it? Pretty high. And then once we do more, only then do we do it better, right? And then once we do it better, then we can finally go on to new. Now, this is the biggest issue that I had, and probably a lot of you guys are having, is that I did a lot of new before I did a lot of more and did better. And the problem with doing new is that when you do something new, there is a lot of resources and energy required to get that new thing to actually work. Just think about how long it took you to get this thing to work that you can do more of. And when you try and do something new, you lose a lot of efficiency through your resources, you lose a lot of time, and you lose a lot of money. So that's why we always want to do more of what's already working. And when I started doing more of what's ever working, because I used to have that shiny object syndrome, like I think a lot of other people, I hear some new tactic on Twitter or Instagram, and I go try and do this, or try and do that, and my mind's constantly scattered. I'm working 12 hours a day, hustling. And when I just started doing more of what's working and use this system that I'm talking to you guys about, I was able to scale, this brand that I'm currently in Cure Skincare from 0 to 50 million in like 3 years, working a couple hours a day, because I was just pulling the right levers at the right time. So first thing is to do more. More ad spend. All right? More creatives. More bundles. More offers. Whatever it is that is working, do more. That is your first step. Now, the question becomes, if you can't do more and you don't know what to do more of, then your constraint is metrics. Now, this always happens when you don't have a good hold of your metrics, right? You don't understand what your metrics are in the business, whether that would be your CAC to payback period. Sorry, just your payback period, which is your CAC to LTV-GP ratio. Or you don't know what your MER is. You don't know what your contribution margin is. You don't know what your cost per creative is. Whatever it might be is a whole heap of numbers that you have to understand before you can actually know what you can do more of or not. So if you understand what to do more of, the first step is to understand your metrics in more detail. It might be even like your cash conversion cycle. All right, see if you can afford to even do more. That's constraint number 2. If you know your metrics, right, and you still can't do more, then there's a third step. And that third step is money. Then money is your constraint. Now, when we think about money as a constraint in e-commerce business, we like to segment it into 3 different parts, right? You have 3 different contribution margins. You have contribution margin 1. Now that is literally your product minus shipping. Sales minus your product and your shipping. Now this should equal to at least 60% at the subscription mission. Now this should equal to at least 60% if you're a subscription business, or 70% plus if you're a device company or a business, stuff like that. You need the margin in terms of you can do the marketing and acquire customers profitably. And if you don't have this intact, then the model that you're running, the money model that you're currently using, is going to be extremely hard to scale and actually make money with. So make sure your contribution margin number 1 ratios are intact. Now, contribution margin 2 is all about your marketing. So what are you left with after your sales, your product, your shipping, and your marketing costs, minus marketing? Now this, once again, has to be tailored towards everyone's business. I'm trying to give you some benchmarks to go off, but a good medium is 25%. You should have 20% margin left over after your marketing costs, after your product, after your shipping, as a good healthy way to run your business. Now, 30% is amazing, 20% is not so good. And it's also going to depend on how quick you're scaling the business. As an example, if you're in a subscription business and you want to push the limits, you can probably afford to have a lower contribution margin because you know your payback period is going to come eventually. Or you might be like a one-man band. You might be super efficient, have no OPEX, no operating costs, and then you can operate, very efficiently. Now, if your contribution margin as a percentage here isn't healthy, then this is your constraint to fix. And when we're trying to fix our contribution to ratio, margin to ratio, we have to think of it in 2 different parts, right? We have our profit per visitors to the website, and then we have our traffic, which is our customer acquisition costs, which is like the traffic, okay? The first thing to ask is that, are we getting as much profit from the visitors as we can? Now, I'm not gonna talk to you about conversion rate because that's all gonna change. What's mattered is the CMV, contribution margin per visitor. That's all we care about. And your job is to create offers that has enough of a significant contribution margin value where you can pay for the customer acquisition costs and you're left with 25% margin. So that's your game to work it out. And maybe your offer just isn't as irresistible as it could be. Maybe your offer just doesn't convert as well as it should be, so you have a low conversion ratio margin, which makes it extremely hard to acquire customers profitably. The next thing, if your offer's converting well, then you might have a CAC problem. It means your CTRs is too high based on industry standards or whatever it should be. Your cost per click, too high. Maybe in terms of your creatives, your hold rates are very low. Your thumbs up ratios are so low. But inevitably, it's your creatives that are constrained from actually, scaling your business. And that's where you have to put all your energy to work on. Okay? Now, what happens if you have 25%, contribution margin, then none of these two are really a problem. Then what happens then? Well, then we go to CM3. CM3 is after your OPEX, your operating cost. Operating costs. People don't know what OPEX is. So if your operating costs should be around 10%, 10% of your sales, right? And if it's anything more than that, then I think especially in the age of AI today, then I think you're going to have a problem. So you have to be a bit more efficient. And sometimes what I've seen in coaching different brands, and I have myself, is that everything was intact here, but then my operations was just too bloated, too many staff, not adding enough value in the business, and I was bringing my profit down. And then ultimately at the end, you should be left with at least 15% net margins. I think at least. If you're not running a 15% net, I think you need to scale back and be more efficient and get better before you get bigger. I think there's a massive narrative of scale hard, and do a lot of revenue without profit, which means to make actually no sense. That's for another video. But that's the money model, right? Now, if the money is all in check, you know what I mean? You're looking at all this, you're like, yep, got margin on my product. Yep, marketing is efficient, 25% contribution margin. Yep, OPEX under 10%. I'm netting 15, 20%. But still, I've got an issue of actually growing the business. That moves to the next constraint then. And that next constraint is market. So many founders think that their market is limited to them actually scaling. Like, it's insane. Always the thing I hear is my market. When you say that your market is a constraint, that you can't scale, that's meaning that there's not enough buyers for the product that you're actually trying to sell. And the reality is that is absolute bullshit. 99.9% of the time, it's absolute bullshit, especially in e-commerce because you can ship globally, you can obviously ship worldwide, you can ship anywhere. So the market's always enough. The reality is you're just not good enough, right? Most of the time, maybe you have, weak positioning. You have weak creatives. You have a weak offer. And another thing to probably drive home at this point is that If you think market is a constraint, let me tell you something. You are going to have a constraint no matter what market you go into. If you're in a market where maybe it's smaller, maybe people don't really know about it, well, you have less competitors. And if you move into a market that everyone knows about, everyone's scaling in, and it's a great market to be in, well, then you have the constraint of competing against other people who are probably very, very good, maybe have years and years of experience on you at e-commerce, and you have to compete with them to acquire customers, right? There's always going to be a constraint. And a lot of the business that I speak to, the founders that I speak to, in terms of what they actually want for their life and their business, the market is always big enough for them to create the business they dreamt of and live the life they wanted, right? It's just about getting better. It's not about making an excuse about the market. It's about being better at marketing, positioning, creatives, offers, whatever it might be, to make sure that you can acquire the customers that are actually there and be better than your competitors. So get better. Don't use market as a constraint, although potentially it could be, but very rarely it actually is. Now, the last one that it could be, if you said yes to all this and you're going down the chain, is capacity. Now, this is a very real constraint that a lot of people come up against and they don't really realize it. For example, if you go back to the money constraint, you might be super profitable, right? And your CAC to LTV ratio is profitable, but you don't have enough cash in the bank, right? You don't have enough cash into bank to bankroll you to actually acquire more customers. So your constraint might be freeing up more cash, clearing out inventory that you're not selling, renegotiating supplier terms so you can scale more, right? Then another constraint might be more creatives. And this is one that we faced recently, right? More creatives. And when you do more creatives, then requires more people. So then people become your constraint. You need to hire more people. And that's a very real constraint. Getting good quality people isn't easy. You might also have operational constraint, supply chain, customer service, whatever it might be. So capacity is definitely a real constraint if everything else kind of lines up. And at some point, capacity is always your constraint because there's only so much that you can do in terms of spend before you become inefficient. You need to do more creatives, more output, more landing pages to more people, and diversify, especially in today in terms of Meta and any other acquisitions channels that you're trying to enter. So that is the last constraint. And for us at the moment in our business, it's definitely a people constraint. We need more people to do more of what's actually working. So let's do a little recap, right? And I'll show you how this system works hand in hand. First thing we said, do more, right? Do more of what is already working. And if you don't know what to do more, then look at the metrics. If you work out the metrics, then look at the money model you have. Can you acquire customers properly? How does your growth engine look like? Is your creatives good enough? Is your offers good enough? Whatever. The next stage is markets. If you think constraint is your markets, then expand markets. Sell a different product. Enter new different categories, whatever it might be. And the last one is capacity. And you see how this system works. For example, when I mentioned that I had the capacity constraint earlier, once I solve this constraint, then what I do? I come back and do more, right? Do more. Oh, I can't do more anymore. Why can't I do more? Go down. Oh, it's because now my customer acquisition cost has increased. I need to get better at creatives. All right, fix that. Do more. Come back. Oh, you know what? Maybe I have got to the point where I've absolutely smashed our market in terms of brand awareness and everything else. Very hard to do, but let's say I did it. Let's enter new markets. All right, more. Do more markets. As you can see, this whole system just keeps feeding off each other. So the first one is always do more, then better, then new at the end. But until you can keep going through this system and you can't do anything more or better, that's the only time you introduce new. Until then, keep solving your constraints because this is the most efficient way to grow your business at scale to make it as profitable as possible. So I hope that helped. If you guys want a custom ChatGPT to kind of walk you through the system, just DM me on Instagram the word constraint and I'll send it right over to you. And if you want to join Ecomm Architects and get coaching like this plus more with a whole team of mentors, visit us at ecomarchitects.com and I look forward to seeing you guys there.